They tried to hang her for loving him, then he healed her right before their eyes. Amina lived in a small village surrounded by hills and rivers, where life followed the rhythm of the seasons. The villagers were simple people, hardworking and deeply attached to their traditions. Everyone knew each other, and the sense of community was strong. But this closeness also meant that anything unusual or different was noticed immediately and often judged harshly. Amina was known for her gentle nature. She helped her neighbors whenever she could, whether it was fetching water from the well for the elderly or teaching small children to read. Her smile was soft, and her eyes reflected kindness, making people trust her instantly. Yet despite her warmth and helpfulness, her heart was drawn to someone who many believed was unsuitable for her. Karim was from a neighboring town. He was not rich, nor did he belong to a family of high status, but he had something far more valuable: kindness, patience, and a strong sense of fairness. People admired him quietly, though many considered him unusual because he treated everyone with the same respect, regardless of their social standing. Karim had known Amina for years, their families having met occasionally at the market or during festivals. But it wasn't until a chance encounter near the river that their connection began to deepen. Amina was gathering water, her basket heavy with clay jars, when Karim offered to help. Their hands brushed, and though it was a small, simple gesture, something sparked between them. From that day on, they found reasons to meet. Sometimes it was at the edge of the forest where wildflowers grew, or near the riverbank where the sunlight danced on the water. They shared stories of their childhoods, their dreams, and the little worries that filled their days. Amina loved how Karim listened, truly listened, and never judged her thoughts or feelings. Karim admired Amina's courage and her ability to care for others even when life was difficult. Over time, their friendship blossomed into love. It was a quiet, tender love built on trust, respect, and the joy of simply being together. But the village did not see it this way. In that place, love was not always free. It was carefully controlled by customs and family expectations. Marriages were arranged to strengthen social bonds, preserve family honor, or maintain wealth. A union between someone like Amina and someone like Karim was frowned upon. When the villagers began to notice Amina and Karim spending time together, whispers started to spread. Some said that Amina was disobedient. Others warned that Karim was ambitious, that he might take advantage of her family. These rumors traveled quickly, carried by the wind from one home to another, growing with each retelling. Amina was aware of the growing tension, but she did not let it shake her. She believed that love, true love, was worth the risks. Karim, too, was steadfast, though he understood the danger they faced. They spoke in hushed tones when they met, often under the cover of darkness. Yet even then, their hearts felt free in ways that words could not describe. Each meeting brought them closer, and their letters, carefully hidden from prying eyes, were filled with promises of devotion and dreams of a life together. One afternoon, Amina was walking along the riverbank, thinking about the letters she had received from Karim. The sunlight reflected on the water, and the gentle breeze played with her hair. She felt a mix of happiness and fear. Happiness because she had someone who understood her completely, and fear because she knew that if anyone discovered their love, the consequences could be severe. In the village, even small acts of defiance could bring punishment. Her heart ached at the thought, but she pushed the fear aside, determined not to let it control her life. Meanwhile, Karim was working in the fields, planting seeds for the upcoming harvest. His hands were rough from labor, but his thoughts were gentle, filled with concern for Amina. He imagined their future together, a future where they could walk freely without fear, laugh openly, and share their joys without judgment. Yet he knew that their love was under constant threat. Every day brought the possibility of discovery, and with it, shame or worse. But love, he believed, was stronger than fear. It gave him courage, just as Amina's love gave her strength. The tension in the village was rising. Elderly women who had once been kind to Amina now cast suspicious glances her way. Children, too young to understand the complexity of relationships, repeated what they had heard from adults, sometimes innocently, sometimes cruelly. Amina felt the eyes of the village upon her constantly. Every step she took, every word she spoke seemed to be judged. Yet she never stopped helping those in need. Her heart remained open, even as the whispers of disapproval grew louder. One day, the village elders called a meeting in the central square. Everyone gathered, and the air was thick with anticipation. Amina and Karim were not present at first, but the subject of the discussion became clear quickly. They were accused of breaking the rules, of defying tradition by falling in love. The elders spoke of honor, duty, and the consequences of disobedience. Their voices were stern, leaving little room for compromise. The villagers listened, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably, unsure of what to feel. Amina, hearing of the gathering, knew that something terrible might happen. She could feel her pulse quicken as she approached the square, her heart pounding in her chest. Karim followed, his steps steady but his mind racing with worry. They arrived to see the crowd gathered, whispers turning into murmurs of disapproval and anger. Amina's stomach tightened as the elders pointed toward her, their expressions harsh and unforgiving. It was the moment they had both feared, the moment when the villagers' judgment would descend upon her. Despite her fear, Amina stood tall. She lifted her chin and met the eyes of those around her, refusing to let them see her panic. Karim stood beside her, his hand brushing against hers for comfort. Together, they faced the crowd, their love evident in the silent strength they shared. The villagers were taken aback by her courage. Many had expected tears and pleading, but instead, they saw a young woman unbroken, holding fast to her beliefs and emotions. The elders, however, were unmoved. They declared that such a bond was unacceptable and that a punishment must be carried out to preserve tradition. Amina listened quietly, feeling a mixture of despair and resolve. She knew the path ahead would be difficult, yet she refused to renounce her feelings. Karim's presence gave her strength, and she knew that no matter what happened, their love could not be erased. Even as the situation grew tense, small acts of support emerged. Some villagers, quietly moved by the devotion they witnessed, began to murmur in Amina's favor. These voices were few, but they offered a glimmer of hope. Amina and Karim exchanged a glance, a silent understanding passing between them. They knew the days ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine, but they also knew that their connection was real and powerful, capable of withstanding fear, doubt, and judgment. As the sun began to set over the village, casting long shadows across the square, Amina and Karim remained standing together. Their love, though challenged, was not broken. It had grown quietly in secret, blossomed in the face of adversity, and now faced the ultimate test. The villagers watched, some with anger, some with curiosity, as the two young people embodied courage, devotion, and hope. In that moment, it was clear that their story was only beginning. The challenges ahead would be immense, but Amina and Karim had already discovered something invaluable: the power of unwavering love and the strength that comes from facing fear together. The village, with its traditions and strict rules, would soon learn that love could not be easily controlled, and that sometimes the human heart defies expectations in ways no one can predict. Amina and Karim left the square that evening with a mixture of fear and determination. Their steps were careful, their minds alert, but their hearts were united. The whispers of the villagers followed them, a reminder of the danger they faced, yet also a testament to the fact that their love had already begun to challenge the old ways. With every glance, every shared word, they strengthened the bond that had brought them together. The night settled over the village, quiet yet heavy with the knowledge that the days to come would demand courage, resilience, and an unshakable faith in each other. And so, the story of Amina and Karim began, not with a celebration, but with a test. It was a story of love growing in secret, of hearts beating in unison despite fear, and of two people discovering the extraordinary power that comes when one refuses to surrender to injustice. The first chapter of their journey was written in whispers, glances, and quiet moments, yet it set the stage for events that would touch every corner of the village and leave a mark on all who witnessed it. The day began with an uneasy calm over the village. The sun rose, but its warmth felt muted, as if even nature sensed the storm that was approaching. News of Amina and Karim's love had spread like wildfire, and the elders had gathered in the central square to decide on what they called appropriate action. The villagers moved quietly, some curious, others fearful, all aware that this day could change everything. Amina, sensing the tension, stayed close to her home, her mind restless. She knew the elders were not lenient, and she feared what they might decide. Karim stayed near the edge of the village, hidden behind trees, hoping he might find a way to protect her if needed. Yet even he knew that his power was limited. By mid-morning, the villagers had assembled in the square. The elders sat on raised platforms, their faces stern, their eyes scanning the crowd. Amina was brought forward, escorted by two men chosen by the elders. Her heart pounded, not only from fear but from the injustice of it all. She had done nothing but follow her heart, yet she faced condemnation for that very act. Karim stepped forward from the crowd, making his presence known, and whispered her name. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting connection, Amina felt a small surge of courage. She would not break, not now, not ever. The elders spoke first, their voices cold and deliberate. They accused Amina of dishonoring the village and disobeying the rules that had governed the community for generations. They declared that love outside of family approval was dangerous, that it could bring shame, and that a punishment must be carried out immediately to set an example. The villagers murmured among themselves. Some agreed with the elders, their faces hardened by tradition. Others were uncomfortable, realizing that a young woman who had only shown kindness and love was now facing extreme consequences. Amina listened quietly, her hands bound in front of her. She did not cry, she did not plead, but inside her fear was like a storm raging. She thought of her parents who had passed away when she was young, and of Karim, whose loyalty she could not doubt. The weight of their eyes upon her was heavy, yet she felt a strange sense of clarity. This was the moment that would test her strength, her courage, and the depth of her love. Karim stepped closer, trying to intercept the elders, but one of the men placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "This is not your choice," the elder said, his tone sharp. As the crowd watched, the preparations for the punishment began. A tall wooden post had been erected in the center of the square, its rough surface casting long shadows in the morning sun. Amina's heart skipped a beat as she saw it. The reality of what was about to happen hit her fully. She had always imagined danger in abstract terms, but now, standing in the open, she felt the cold grip of fear. Karim whispered her name again, gently, as if trying to steady both their hearts. He could see the fear in her eyes and it broke him, but he refused to show weakness. They were in this together. The men adjusted the ropes, preparing to carry out the elders' orders. Amina's knees trembled slightly, but she kept her posture firm. She refused to let them see her brokenness. The villagers, some of whom had known her all their life, looked on silently. There were whispers of sympathy, quiet murmurs questioning the fairness of the situation, but the majority remained silent, either out of fear or obedience to tradition. The tension in the air was palpable, a heavy weight pressing down on everyone present. Karim could feel the eyes of the elders on him as well. He knew that if he tried to intervene openly, the outcome could be disastrous for both of them. Yet his mind raced, searching for a way to help. He remembered the stories of love and courage. He had heard from travelers passing through the village tales of people who had defied impossible odds, who had used cleverness, faith, and bravery to survive. He clung to hope, small as it was, believing that there must be a way to protect Amina. Amina's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She remembered the secret places she had shared with Karim, the riverbank where they had first met, the edge of the forest where they had laughed freely. Those memories gave her strength. She realized that even if the world around her seemed cruel, their love had existed, and that was something no one could take away. She focused on Karim's presence, on the warmth of his hand brushing hers, and it steadied her trembling heart. The elders continued their proclamations, speaking of honor, shame, and the importance of obedience. Their words were harsh, but in the midst of them, something remarkable began to happen. Some villagers, especially the younger ones, began to whisper among themselves, questioning the severity of the punishment. Could love truly be a crime? Could a heart filled with kindness and devotion be wrong? These quiet doubts grew slowly, like embers in the wind. As the moment drew closer, the rope was tightened, and the villagers watched with bated breath. Amina's mind flashed through a lifetime of memories in seconds. The laughter of children she had taught, the smiles of neighbors she had helped, and the quiet moments shared with Karim. She felt an unexplainable calm begin to settle over her. Her fear was still there, but it was joined by something stronger, a sense of resolve. She would face this moment with dignity, with courage, and with the knowledge that her love was true. Karim stepped forward slightly, his voice steady as he addressed the elders. "Please," he said, "she has done no harm. She has only loved honestly. Is that a crime? Must the heart always obey rules that are unfair?" The elders did not respond immediately. Some villagers shifted uncomfortably, sensing the truth in his words. Others remained firm, unwilling to challenge the authority of the elders. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and even the smallest crack in a wall can change its strength forever. Amina's thoughts turned inward. She imagined the future she wanted, not one dictated by fear or rigid rules, but one where love could flourish. In her mind, she and Karim walked through fields of flowers, the sun warming their faces, their hands intertwined. She drew strength from these images, realizing that even if the villagers tried to take her freedom, they could not take away her spirit, her memories, or her love. The rope was adjusted again, and the square fell into silence. Every eye was on Amina, waiting for the moment that seemed inevitable. Her heart raced, yet she breathed slowly, grounding herself in the present. Karim's hand reached for hers, and she squeezed it tightly. Their connection, unspoken but powerful, seemed to radiate a force that even the elders could not ignore. It was a quiet defiance, a refusal to surrender to fear or cruelty. Then, a small but important moment occurred. A young villager, a boy who had grown up watching Amina care for everyone, stepped forward slightly, murmuring that she had always been kind, always helpful, always true. His words were soft, but they carried weight. Others began to nod, their eyes flicking between Amina and Karim, questioning the wisdom of the punishment. The elders noticed, and attention began to grow among them as well. The certainty that had guided their actions was now challenged by the reality of what they were witnessing. A love that was genuine, a courage that was undeniable, and a village beginning to question its own rules. Amina's eyes met Karim's again. She did not speak, but she felt the strength of their bond. In that silent moment, she realized that love could be more powerful than fear, more enduring than punishment, and more transformative than the strictest rules. The realization brought a quiet calm over her, even as the rope waited, even as the square held its collective breath. Karim, sensing the shift, whispered words of encouragement. "Hold on," he said softly. "We are stronger together. They cannot take what we have inside. Stay with me." His voice carried warmth, hope, and determination, and Amina felt it fill her with courage. In that moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, their hearts, their hands, and their unwavering commitment to each other. The elders hesitated, sensing the growing unease in the crowd. Their authority, once unquestioned, now faced doubt. Amina, standing tall despite the terror around her, became a symbol of something larger than herself: the power of truth, the courage of love, and the strength of human spirit. The villagers' murmurs grew louder, more confident, as if the wind itself had begun to whisper a different story, one where compassion and fairness mattered more than rigid rules. As the sun climbed higher, the moment of reckoning approached. Amina's courage had inspired something remarkable, a quiet resistance among the villagers. Their eyes, once filled with judgment, now held curiosity, doubt, and even a flicker of admiration. Karim stood steadfast, his presence a shield of hope and unwavering love. Together they faced the challenge ahead, ready for whatever would come, knowing that their bond had already begun to change hearts, even in the midst of fear. The square seemed suspended in time, a moment caught between judgment and mercy, fear and hope, tradition and love. And in that moment, it became clear that Amina's journey was only beginning. What was meant to be a day of punishment had transformed into a silent battle of courage, faith, and the extraordinary power of a love that refused to be broken. The square was silent, heavy with anticipation. Amina stood at the center, her hands still bound, her heart pounding, yet her gaze remained steady. Every villager's eyes were on her, waiting, watching, and judging. Karim stayed close by, his own heart racing, but he refused to show fear. In that tense atmosphere, even the slightest movement seemed amplified, every breath measured, every whisper magnified. The elders had decided that there would be no negotiation, yet something in the air felt different. Some villagers, quietly, were beginning to question what they had always believed. Amina closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to calm herself. She thought of the riverbank where she and Karim had first met, the sunlight glimmering on the water, the sound of the breeze rustling through the trees. Those memories gave her a sense of peace amidst the chaos. She focused on Karim's hand reaching for hers and felt a warmth that steadied her. It was a simple touch, but it carried all the love, trust, and hope they shared. For a brief instant, fear seemed to recede, replaced by determination. Karim stepped a little closer. His voice was calm, though his heart was racing. "Amina," he said softly, "I am here. You are not alone, trust me. Whatever happens, we face it together." She nodded slightly, her eyes meeting his, drawing courage from the unspoken promise in his gaze. The villagers, watching this small act of devotion, began to murmur among themselves. Some faces softened. Some hearts began to question the severity of the punishment. It was a small shift, barely noticeable, yet profound. The elders raised their hands, signaling the men to proceed with their orders. Amina's body tensed as the ropes were adjusted. The noose was heavy, and the knowledge of its purpose pressed down on her like a stone. Her breath quickened, but she held herself upright, refusing to give the villagers the satisfaction of seeing her broken. Karim's eyes searched hers, silently urging her to hold on, to survive, to trust in the bond they shared. Then, something remarkable began to happen. Karim, overwhelmed with desperation and love, leaned closer and whispered words only Amina could hear. His words were not loud, but they carried the power of faith, hope, and unwavering devotion. He reminded her of every joyful moment they had shared, every quiet conversation, every promise exchanged beneath the stars. He spoke of their future together, a life where love would flourish, free from fear. Amina listened intently, each word weaving calm through her trembling heart. As he spoke, the villagers noticed something extraordinary. Amina's fear, which had been so visible moments before, began to lessen. Her body relaxed slightly, her hands unclenching, her breathing becoming steadier. Those who had come expecting only terror and sorrow now found themselves witnessing something that defied explanation. Her face, once pale and tight with anxiety, began to regain color. Her eyes, still wide, now held a serene clarity. It was as though the very presence of Karim's love, his words, and his faith were healing her in real time. The elders, watching intently, were struck with disbelief. They had never seen anything like this. Their authority, grounded in the unquestionable rule of tradition, felt challenged by the undeniable reality before them. The villagers whispered nervously, some crossing themselves quietly, some shaking their heads in amazement. The moment hung in the air, heavy with awe and disbelief. What was supposed to be an execution had become something far greater, a demonstration of the extraordinary power of love and hope. Karim did not waver. He continued to speak softly to Amina, holding her gaze when he could, offering comfort and reassurance. "Look at me," he said. "You are stronger than you know. I will not let them harm you. Your heart is brave. We are together in this, and nothing can take that away." Amina, feeling the truth of his words, closed her eyes briefly. A warmth spread through her chest, a gentle radiance that seemed to calm every trembling muscle, steadying her body and spirit. The villagers could not look away. They were captivated, unsure whether what they were witnessing was real or a miracle. Some of the younger villagers began to murmur aloud, their voices soft but clear. "She is not afraid anymore," one said. "Look at her face. It is calm." "How can that be?" another nodded. "It is as if the love between them is stronger than anything we have known." Even among the elders, doubt began to creep in. They had always believed that fear could control the heart, that punishment could enforce obedience. Yet here was a young woman, facing the most terrifying moment of her life, radiating courage and serenity because of love. It was something they could not explain, something they had never witnessed before. Amina opened her eyes, meeting Karim's once again. In that gaze, the entire world seemed to shrink. Nothing else mattered, neither the ropes, nor the crowd, nor the judgmental elders. There was only the connection between them, a bond that had been tested in whispers, in secret meetings, and now in the most public of moments. That bond, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, seemed to radiate outwards, touching the hearts of those around them. Karim's words continued, gentle yet filled with unwavering conviction. "You are not alone. Nothing can harm your spirit while we are together. Breathe, Amina. Let your heart guide you. Trust in what we have built together." The villagers watched, some in awe, some in disbelief, as Amina's body shifted subtly, the tension leaving her muscles. She blinked slowly, her chest rising and falling evenly for the first time in what felt like hours. The fear that had gripped her was now tempered with something far stronger: hope. The square was silent, save for the soft murmurs of those who had begun to see the truth. Even the elders, rigid and stern as they were, could not ignore the change before their eyes. They exchanged uncertain glances, realizing that something beyond tradition, beyond punishment, was unfolding. The villagers' whispered doubts grew louder, and for the first time it became clear that this was no ordinary confrontation. This was a moment of transformation, a living testament to courage, faith, and the extraordinary power of love. Amina's gaze met Karim's again, and in that instant everything shifted. She felt a surge of energy, a quiet power that seemed to rise from her core. The terror of the ropes, the judgment of the crowd, the harsh words of the elders, all of it began to fade into the background. She felt lighter, stronger, more herself than she had in hours. Karim noticed the change immediately, his heart swelling with relief and gratitude. The bond they shared had not only sustained her spirit, but had, in some miraculous way, healed her very being. Some villagers began to step back, unsure of what to do or think. They had expected a scene of fear, punishment, and shame, but instead they saw courage, love, and resilience. A hush fell over the crowd, heavier than any sound that had come before. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The rope, still there as a reminder of what was meant to occur, now seemed insignificant compared to the force of human connection on display. Karim leaned even closer, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of their shared history. "Look at me, Amina. You are stronger than they can ever imagine. Your heart is free, no matter what happens. We are together, and that is all that matters." Amina felt the truth in his words, and her chest swelled with a mix of relief, courage, and love. The villagers, seeing the unbreakable spirit between them, began to murmur more confidently. Some crossed themselves, others shook their heads in disbelief, but all felt the undeniable shift in the energy of the moment. The elders, witnessing the transformation, felt a profound challenge to their authority. Their rules, their punishments, their centuries of tradition, all of it seemed powerless against the reality of what they were seeing. Amina's calm, her courage, and the love radiating between her and Karim were impossible to deny. Even the harshest voices in the crowd began to falter, their certainty shaken. The young boy who had earlier spoken in her favor now stood taller, inspired by the strength and resilience of two people who had refused to be broken. Karim continued to hold her gaze, never wavering, never doubting. "Whatever comes," he said softly, "know that we are stronger together. They cannot take what is inside us. Trust in the love that has brought us this far." Amina's lips curved into a small, serene smile. The fear that had once threatened to overwhelm her was now tempered with courage and hope. She knew that no matter what the outcome, their connection had already triumphed in a way that nothing else could undo. The square remained tense, but the fear that had dominated the morning had begun to shift. Hope, courage, and the undeniable strength of love were filling the space instead. The villagers, some reluctantly, some inspired, began to see that the punishment they had prepared might no longer be justified. Amina and Karim, standing together, had demonstrated something far greater than the elders had anticipated. The power of human connection, the resilience of the heart, and the miraculous ability of love to heal even in the darkest moments. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between Amina and Karim, a promise, a recognition, a bond that would never be broken. They had faced the impossible together, and in doing so, they had begun to change the hearts and minds of everyone around them. The story of their love, once secret and fragile, had now become a living testament to courage, faith, and the extraordinary power of love to overcome fear, doubt, and cruelty. The square was quiet, but the silence was different now. It was no longer tense with fear, but heavy with awe and curiosity. The villagers who had gathered, some of them still unsure of what to believe, began to whisper among themselves. They could not ignore what they had just witnessed. The sudden, calm transformation of Amina, who had faced the greatest terror of her life without faltering. Karim's presence, his steady words, and his unwavering devotion had not only comforted her, but somehow strengthened her in a way that no one could explain. The elders, who had believed that fear and punishment could control the heart, now found themselves confronted with a force far greater than they had anticipated. Some villagers shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. Their hands fidgeted nervously, and some even stepped back, unsure of where their loyalty should lie. For generations, they had been taught that disobedience was to be punished, that tradition was above personal feelings. Yet now, confronted with the courage and serenity of Amina and the unwavering love of Karim, they began to question everything they had been told. Could a heart filled with love really be wrong? Could someone who had only acted with kindness and courage deserve punishment? These questions rippled quietly through the crowd, reaching even the ears of those who had long supported the elders' authority. The elders themselves began to show signs of uncertainty. Their faces, once stern and resolute, now reflected doubt. One elder, an older man whose authority had never been questioned, spoke first. This is not what I expected," he said slowly, his voice tinged with hesitation. We have punished disobedience for many years, yet look at her. She does not break, she does not falter. She stands with strength we have not seen before." The other elders murmured among themselves, some nodding, some frowning, but all aware that their certainty had been shaken. The rules they had relied upon, the fear they had instilled, seemed suddenly powerless against the reality before them. Amina, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, felt a small flicker of hope. Her heart still raced, but it was no longer consumed by fear. She looked at Karim, and their hands brushed again, a simple gesture that carried the weight of everything they had endured. He gave her a slight nod, a silent message that they would face whatever came next together. This quiet unity strengthened her, and for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to believe that their love could endure, even in the face of the harshest judgment. The younger villagers, inspired by what they saw, began to speak more openly. "She has always been kind," one woman said softly. "She helps everyone. How can this be wrong?" A man nearby added, "And he has only ever shown respect and care. What harm is there in their love?" These murmurs spread through the crowd, growing louder, carrying with them a subtle but undeniable challenge to the elders' authority. For the first time, it seemed possible that tradition could bend in the face of humanity. The elders, feeling the pressure, attempted to reassert their authority. "This is not about kindness or love," one said sharply. "This is about honor and obedience. If we allow this, others will think they can disregard our rules. Our village will lose its order." Yet even as he spoke, the words sounded hollow. The villagers' murmurs had grown too strong to be ignored. Eyes that had once been bowed in fear were now raised in quiet defiance. Hearts that had once accepted harsh judgment without question now hesitated. Karim took a careful step forward, addressing the crowd with measured words. "We do not seek to break tradition," he said. "We do not wish to challenge your ways out of disrespect. But surely there is room for compassion, for understanding, for fairness. Amina has done nothing but love honestly and courageously. Is that truly deserving of punishment?" His voice, calm yet firm, carried across the square. The villagers listened intently, and even the elders could not ignore the truth in his words. There was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the balance of power in that moment. Amina, encouraged by Karim's words and the subtle support of the villagers, lifted her head high. She spoke softly yet clearly so that all could hear. "I have done nothing but love honestly," she said. "I have not hurt anyone. I have only followed the feelings of my heart. If love is a crime, then perhaps it is a crime we must all reconsider." Her words, simple and true, resonated deeply. The crowd stirred, murmuring in agreement, their eyes wide with awe. Even those who had supported the punishment found themselves questioning the fairness of it all. One of the younger elders, a man who had often remained silent in the council, stepped forward cautiously. Perhaps we have been too strict," he admitted, his voice tentative. "We have followed the rules without question, but now I see that fear alone cannot guide the heart. Perhaps mercy is needed here." His words sent a ripple through the elders, some nodding in agreement, others frowning, unsure of what to do. The certainty that had once ruled the village square was now replaced with doubt, uncertainty, and a fragile sense of possibility. The villagers, sensing the change in the elders, began to whisper more openly. Some nodded to Amina and Karim, others exchanged looks of relief and admiration. The energy in the square shifted, from tension and fear to something more profound: hope. Amina felt it wash over her, a gentle warmth that steadied her trembling body. Karim's hand remained at hers, a silent anchor in the shifting currents of doubt and expectation. Together they had become the center of a quiet revolution, a testament to courage, resilience, and the transformative power of love. As the day progressed, the elders continued to deliberate. They spoke in hushed tones, sometimes glancing at Amina and Karim, unsure of how to proceed. Each minute that passed made it clearer that enforcing the punishment would no longer be simple or unquestioned. The villagers' growing support for the young couple added weight to their hesitation. They could feel that the story unfolding before them would not be forgotten, that it would leave a mark on the community for years to come. Amina, sensing the elders' indecision, allowed herself a small, private smile. She had faced fear that morning, stood tall before the crowd, and found strength she had not known she possessed. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to stand firm in spite of it. Her love for Karim and the unwavering support he had shown her had given her that courage. The villagers had begun to see it too. Their hearts, once hardened by tradition and fear, were beginning to soften. Karim, noticing the subtle changes in the crowd, spoke once more, addressing both the villagers and the elders. "What we have shown today is not just love," he said. "It is strength, courage, and honesty. We have not broken any laws of decency or kindness. We ask only for understanding, for the chance to live freely, to love openly. Surely that is not a crime." His words carried weight, and the murmurs that followed indicated that his message had been heard. The elders, faced with the undeniable truth in his statements, began to realize that forcing the punishment could create more division and resentment than compliance. Slowly, the mood in the square shifted. The whispers of admiration grew louder, and the silence that had once been heavy with fear now carried a sense of possibility. Some villagers, emboldened by what they had seen, stepped forward to speak in favor of Amina and Karim. "We have watched her help everyone," one said. "She has done no wrong. She deserves our respect, not punishment." Others nodded in agreement, their voices joining together in a quiet chorus of support. The elders, seeing the collective shift in the village, began to reconsider their decision. They realized that enforcing the punishment now could cause resentment, break the fragile trust within the community, and go against the very values they claimed to protect. Slowly, reluctantly, they began to signal to the men who had been preparing the punishment to pause. Amina's eyes widened slightly, hope and relief mingling as she realized that the moment of terror might finally be passing. Karim, still holding her hand, whispered gently, "We are almost through this." "They are beginning to see reason." Amina nodded, her heart still racing but steadied by the shift in the village's mood. The young couple stood together, a living symbol of courage and love, their presence challenging old rules and inspiring new understanding. The villagers, once bound by fear and tradition, began to glimpse the possibility of a more compassionate and just path forward. By late afternoon, the elders had made their decision. The punishment would not be carried out. Instead, they would allow Amina and Karim to leave the square freely, acknowledging the strength of their bond and the courage they had shown. Some villagers cheered quietly, others nodded in respect, and even the elders, though reluctant, recognized that enforcing strict tradition in the face of true courage and love was no longer justifiable. Amina and Karim, freed from the immediate threat, embraced briefly, their hearts full of relief and gratitude. They had faced the unimaginable, stood firm in the face of fear, and emerged stronger, their bond unbroken. The villagers, witnessing the outcome, began to discuss quietly how love, courage, and compassion could coexist with tradition. The day had transformed not only the lives of the young couple, but also the hearts of the entire village. From that day forward, the story of Amina and Karim became a symbol of hope. It reminded everyone that courage and love could challenge fear and rigid tradition. The village slowly began to change, guided by the lesson that hearts cannot be controlled by fear alone, and that compassion and understanding are sometimes more powerful than rules. Amina and Karim, having survived the ordeal together, were forever changed, and their love, once secret, now became a quiet beacon of inspiration for all who heard their story. The village had changed. Not immediately, not completely, but the air felt different. Where fear and strict obedience had once ruled, a quiet understanding now took root. Amina and Karim walked together through the square, their hands intertwined, their steps steady and confident. The villagers, some still cautious, watched them with newfound respect. Whispers of admiration replaced the murmurs of judgment, and even the elders, though their pride was bruised, had begun to accept that courage and love could not be suppressed. Amina felt a sense of relief she had never known. The terror she had faced just days ago still lingered in memory, but it no longer held power over her. She had survived the impossible, and more importantly, she had done so with her heart intact. Karim's presence beside her was a constant reminder that she was not alone, that love could be a shield as strong as any protection. They moved slowly, aware of the eyes upon them, yet unafraid. Their journey together was only beginning, and for the first time they could imagine a future without constant fear. The villagers began to approach cautiously. Some brought small gestures of reconciliation, a nod, a smile, even a helping hand with daily tasks. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A young woman who faced the gravest fear with unwavering courage, a young man whose love had given her strength, and the subtle miracle that seemed to have occurred before their eyes. These acts of bravery had sparked reflection and a desire for change in many hearts. People whispered about fairness, about kindness, about the importance of questioning rules that no longer served justice or compassion. Amina and Karim, now free to speak openly, thanked those who had quietly supported them. They spoke of love not as rebellion, but as a force that brings people together, as something that encourages courage, honesty, and care for one another. Their words resonated, slowly breaking down years of rigid thinking and fear-based tradition. The younger villagers, inspired by what they had witnessed, began to carry these lessons into their own lives, helping others and fostering compassion. Even the elders who had once insisted on punishment found themselves unable to deny the truth. They had seen courage in its purest form, a power that no threat, no rule could suppress. Though pride and tradition weighed heavily on them, they gradually accepted that Amina and Karim's love was not a threat to the village, but a reminder of its humanity. Some elders even spoke quietly among themselves about the possibility of change, acknowledging that the past had been too rigid and that compassion must sometimes guide decisions. In the weeks that followed, Amina and Karim's lives returned to a semblance of normalcy, though they were forever marked by the events they had survived. Their days were filled with shared tasks, quiet laughter, and the simple joys of companionship. They visited neighbors, offered help to the elderly, and participated in village events with a new confidence. Their relationship, once secret and fragile, had become a symbol of resilience and hope. People no longer whispered about them with judgment, but with admiration and respect. The story of their ordeal spread quietly through neighboring villages, inspiring others who faced unfair treatment or societal pressure. Travelers spoke of the young couple who had defied fear and shown that love and courage could heal not only the heart, but also the minds of those around them. Parents told their children the story as an example of bravery and loyalty, teaching that kindness and honesty are virtues stronger than fear. Amina and Karim, though humble and private by nature, became quiet icons of hope. Their story whispered wherever injustice was being challenged. Amina, reflecting on everything she had endured, realized that her strength had come not only from Karim's support, but also from her own resilience. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to face fear with dignity and faith. Her heart, once burdened by worry and terror, now felt lighter. Karim had been her anchor, but she had also discovered her own inner strength, a power she had not known existed until it was tested in the most extreme circumstances. Karim, too, had changed. He had learned that love is not only about passion or desire, but about devotion, patience, and unwavering support in moments of crisis. He had discovered the incredible impact that one person's belief and faith can have on another. Through his care for Amina, he had learned that courage grows in the presence of love, and that even the harshest circumstances can be softened by genuine connection. Together, they had become stronger than they could have ever been alone. Life in the village gradually adjusted. While old traditions still lingered, the story of Amina and Karim had created a subtle, lasting shift. Young couples, once afraid of judgment, found encouragement in the example of the two lovers who had faced death and emerged stronger. Villagers began to think more deeply about fairness, about compassion, and about the importance of questioning rules that did not serve justice. The village itself, shaped by generations of strict customs, had begun to learn that the human heart cannot be bound by fear alone. Amina and Karim's bond deepened with every passing day. They shared small, joyful moments, walking along the riverbank at sunset, laughing quietly in the fields, helping neighbors with daily chores, and teaching children the value of honesty and courage. Each act, no matter how small, strengthened the trust and love they had cultivated through years of challenge. Their lives, once overshadowed by fear, were now filled with hope and purpose. As time went on, the villagers came to respect not only Amina and Karim, but the lessons they represented. Their story became a living part of the village's history, a tale of courage, faith, and love that challenged fear and changed hearts. People remembered the day in the square not as a day of punishment, but as a day of awakening. Amina and Karim's unwavering love had sparked reflection, inspired change, and reminded everyone that true strength lies in compassion and courage. Even the elders who had once stood firmly against them began to change in subtle ways. They listened more carefully to the younger generation, questioned some long-held practices, and allowed room for mercy and understanding. The power of their authority, once absolute, had been tempered by the undeniable truth that love and courage could not be silenced. In that balance, the village discovered a new kind of order, one guided by fairness, respect, and the recognition of humanity in every heart. Amina and Karim, forever marked by the trials they had faced, continued their lives with quiet strength and joy. They never forgot the terror, the fear, or the uncertainty of that day, but they also carried with them the knowledge that love could triumph even in the darkest moments. Their story, once filled with danger and despair, became one of inspiration and hope. It reminded everyone, young and old, that courage and love are forces that can transform not only individuals but entire communities. Years later, the village remembered Amina and Karim as more than just survivors. They were teachers, guides, and symbols of hope. Children who had once heard whispers of fear now grew up learning about bravery, compassion, and the power of standing together. Travelers passing through the village carried the story to distant places, spreading a message of courage, love, and resilience. Amina and Karim's lives, once marked by secrecy and danger, had become a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. In quiet moments, Amina and Karim would sit together along the riverbank, remembering the day that had changed everything. They spoke softly about the fear they had faced, the courage they had discovered, and the love that had carried them through. Their hearts, once shadowed by terror, now glowed with the simple joy of being together. They had learned that love is not only about companionship, but about strength, faith, and the ability to face even the greatest challenges with courage. Their story, though rooted in personal experience, became universal in its message. It reminded everyone who heard it that love, courage, and kindness are more powerful than fear, more enduring than strict tradition, and more transformative than the harshest judgment. Amina and Karim had faced the unthinkable, emerged stronger, and in doing so, had inspired countless others to believe in the extraordinary power of the human heart. As the sun set over the village, casting warm, golden light across the fields and rooftops. Amina and Karim walked hand in hand. The village had been changed, hearts had been touched, and traditions had been challenged in ways that could never be forgotten. Their love, once forbidden, had triumphed, not through rebellion or force, but through courage, compassion, and unwavering devotion. And in that triumph, the village had discovered something timeless: the power of love to heal, to inspire, and to endure. Even in the years that followed, the story of Amina and Karim remained a guiding light. People spoke of them not just as a couple who had survived danger, but as symbols of hope, courage, and the extraordinary strength found in hearts that refused to give in to fear. Their lives, filled with quiet joy, devotion, and service to others, became the living proof that love, when true and courageous, can overcome even the darkest moments and leave a lasting legacy for generations to come.